Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're focusing on something really critical in construction, crane safety culture.
Absolutely. It's one of those areas, incredibly demanding, high risk.
Yeah, we're not just talking about big machines here. These are high-stakes lifts. The smallest error can be, well, catastrophic.
Exactly.
We dove into your sources to really get a handle on the current safety playbook. And, importantly, why that playbook seems to work perfectly.
Until it doesn't.
Precisely. Until it suddenly, shockingly fails.
And that's the real tension, isn't it? When we look at construction safety, particularly with complex lifts, what we generally see is this top-down safety culture paradigm.
Okay, top down, what does that mean in practice?
Well, it's structured, it's hierarchical. The whole idea is to enforce safety through mandates coming from management.
So corporate headquarters driving the agenda.
That's right. Management systems, intense training, often mandatory, and universal certifications, that kind of thing.
Right, and we should be clear before we start picking it apart. This model has worked in many ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, your sources are pretty clear that the industry's seen really substantial, measurable improvements. Loss trends are down over the past decade, largely because of this top-down structure.
It definitely provides a necessary backbone, especially for complex operations, no question.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Well, success can breed blind spots. And that's our mission today, really, to move past just, celebrating the progress and actually dissect where that rigid structure starts to create new, sometimes unexpected risks.
So we need to lay out the clear strengths first.
And then understand those surprising points of failure.
I got it.
Exactly. And maybe explore what a new paradigm might look like to close that safety gap.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with the good news, the power of that structure. Where does management's commitment really translate into lives saved, incidents avoided?
Well, number one, it starts with leadership commitment and clear accountability. Simple as that. Meaning, when safety is mandated right from the very top, it sends this non-negotiable message down to the field. And crucially, it means resources get allocated. Money, time, people.
Ah, resources. So safety isn't just a slogan, it's actually budgeted for.
Precisely. It's not an afterthought. It's built into the plan.
And that means real investment.
Yeah.
We saw that example, didn't we? A large construction firm. The CEO didn't just talk about safety.
No, they backed it up, put capital behind it.
They mandated this zero incident goal. And you could see the investment audits, specialized operator training.
And that visibility, that's absolutely key. The result, a 40% drop in crane-related incidents over just 2 years.
40%? That's huge.
It really is. And it's not a coincidence, right? It's the direct impact of leadership making sure funding and time were prioritized, sometimes over pure production pressure.
Okay, so that commitment from the top naturally leads to standardization, I imagine.
It does, yeah. If the executive team sets the protocols, then those rules apply everywhere. Same rules whether you're building in, say, Atlanta or Arizona.
And that standardization is foundational, isn't it? Especially in such a heavily regulated field.
Oh, totally. It ensures uniformity. Everyone's interpreting crucial documents the same way OSHA requirements. Specific crane load charts.
And you can see that saving lives. Like that national contractor example. They implemented a company-wide rigging checklist pushed by the execs.
Right.
And a rigger, just using that mandatory checklist, this universal protocol, caught an overloaded sling on a high-rise lift.
And prevented a potentially massive rigging failure.
Just because the procedure was uniform, non-negotiable across the whole company.
Exactly. The third point is robust training and certification programs. Top-down funding makes these possible.
Management pays for and actually enforces things like NCCCO certification.
Right, ensuring that baseline level of competency, which is just essential when you're dealing with complex lift dynamics.
And that competency is critical when things get tricky, when the environment changes suddenly.
Yeah, the structure provides the education needed to make the right call under pressure.
Like that certified operator on the bridge project. Because of the corporate push for advanced NCCCO training, he correctly interpreted rapidly changing wind speeds.
And he halted operations immediately, avoided a tip-over that maybe a less trained operator might have risked pushing through.
Good call. Okay, what's fourth?
Fourth strength is enhanced safety awareness. This is all the ongoing stuff, the posters, the toolbox talks, the weekly briefings.
Constant reminders.
Exactly. Keeping safety front of mind, hoping to internalize those safe behaviors.
It's like building safety muscle memory through repetition.
Kind of, yeah. And we saw the result with that company's weekly crane safety briefings. A spotter noticed a small detail of frayed cable during a lift.
but critical.
Absolutely critical, and stopped the operation immediately. He actually credited his quick action to that heightened awareness from the regular talks.
So it does sink in.
It can, yeah. And finally, the fifth point. The top-down model ensures resources are available for the safety infrastructure itself.
Not just training, but actual equipment.
Right. Hard equipment, anti-collision systems, proximity sensors, and also the audits needed to make sure that infrastructure is maintained and working.
There was a great example of that, too. A firm invested heavily in crane proximity sensors after a big safety review at the top level.
Mm-hmm.
And on a really congested urban site, the system alerted the operator to a crew nearby, prevented a swing zone accident. Could have been fatal.
So leadership dictates the investment, and then the technology provides that safety barrier on the ground.
Okay, so the takeaway from these 5 points seems pretty clear. For structure, for investment, for standardization, this top-down approach is, well, incredibly effective.
It is, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Uh-oh.
Because the very rigidity, the very structure that delivered all those successes we just talked about, that's also what leads to some of the most spectacular and often surprising failures.
It sounds like a paradox.
Yeah.
You mandate rules to get rid of risk, but the mandates themselves somehow create new risks.
That's exactly it. How does that rigidity start to fail the people who are actually doing the work on the front lines?
Yeah, how?
Well, probably the biggest failure point is the disconnect between management's mandate and the reality in the field.
Meaning?
Management writes rules, often in a nice, clean office somewhere, right? They might overlook site-specific things, mud, tight deadlines, maybe the age of the equipment.
Real-world stuff.
Real-world stuff. So when the rules seem impractical, experienced folks in the field don't see them as protective. They see them as barriers, obstacles to getting the job done.
And they start to resent them. Or ignore them.
Exactly, and that resentment can turn into a real hazard.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Take a policy, maybe written miles away, that demands a no exceptions, crane shutdown during even light rain.
Sounds safe on paper. Sensible.
It does. But picture an operator on a remote site. They're under pressure, tight schedule. They see that rule as just unrealistic bureaucracy. It's just slowing things down unnecessarily, in their view.
So what happens?
So maybe they bypass the internal policy. Just keep the lift going to stay on schedule. And because of that decision, maybe made under pressure, a slippery load shifts and a ground worker gets injured.
Wow. So the rule itself, because it was too rigid, actually pushed the operator towards an unsafe act.
It can, yeah. The system inadvertently creates a culture where sometimes violating policy feels necessary just to maintain production. That's a major systemic problem.
That really is.
And that leads right into the second negative point. An over-reliance on compliance over practicality.
Just checking the boxes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Prioritizing the corporate checklists, the regulatory paperwork. It can make people focus on getting the documentation right rather than actually looking at and mitigating the real-world risk in front of them.
So the operator's performance is judged on whether the paperwork is complete, so they rush the actual inspection. Is that the idea?
That's exactly what can happen. We see operators rushing through daily crane inspection logs just to satisfy the OSHA requirement. Their focus is the paper.
And the risk.
Well, in one case study, a worn swing brake goes completely unreported. Why? Because the focus was on ticking the box on the list, not on carefully examining the mechanism itself.
And the result.
That worn brake caused a load to drift unexpectedly. It struck and collapsed a nearby scaffold. Paperwork was perfect, you know? But safety completely failed.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the third negative, which sounds maybe the most dangerous. Worker disempowerment.
It's a huge one. If management doesn't trust the judgment of their experienced operators on the ground,
They impose these really rigid protocols.
right, protocols that strip away the operator's agency, their ability to use their experience, and that leads to massive pushback, resistance.
It feels like you're wasting a valuable resource there, the operator's experience.
You absolutely are. When safety feels like it's just being imposed from above, with zero input from the field, experienced crane professionals feel micromanaged, and that just destroys any buy-in they might have had.
They know the machine, they know the site conditions.
Better than the executive who wrote the policy hundreds of miles away, most likely. Yeah.
The source material had that example of the strict no override protocol on a sensor.
Right. Sounds protective, doesn't it? No overrides allowed.
But it completely frustrated an experienced operator who knew from his gut and his experience that a minor sensor glitch was harmless in that specific situation.
He knew the machine, knew the context, But the rule was inflexible.
So what did he do?
Out of pure defiance, really resistance to being micromanaged, he disabled the sensor entirely.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And later, he missed a genuine hazard that the sensor would have caught, caused a near miss with a power line.
So the inflexibility of the rule created a defiant, unsafe behavior.
Exactly. A critical failure point. And number 4, we see resource strain.
Yeah.
Actual resource strain.
Also.
The sheer bureaucratic overhead that comes with mandatory safety management, all those extra audits, the seminars, the endless paperwork, it can actually divert funds from other critical operational needs,
Like what?
like basic maintenance on the equipment itself.
Wait, hang on. How can mandatory safety seminars actually hurt the equipment? Wouldn't safety training be part of the operational need?
You'd think so, but sometimes it's a zero-sum game in the budget, isn't it?
I suppose.
We saw a case with a mid-sized contractor. They spent so heavily on mandatory corporate safety training seminars
Okay.
that the budget for basic essential crane upkeep got squeezed. It was cut back.
And the consequence?
A hydraulic failure during a lift. Dropped a steel beam. The investigation traced the failure directly back to skipped essential maintenance.
The money went to seminars instead of servicing the hydraulics.
Precisely. The intention was good train everyone,
Yeah.
but the execution ended up starving the physical equipment of necessary care.
That's counterintuitive, but makes sense when you put it that way.
Mm.
Okay, the final pitfall.
A false sense of security. Complacency.
How does that?
Well, if a company really boasts about having the strongest top-down culture, the best protocols, all the awards, management, and even the workers sometimes can become complacent. They start to assume all the risks are fully mitigated just because they have these great systems on paper.
Hubris, basically.
Hubris is incredibly dangerous in construction.
Yeah. We look at that company that won a major safety award. Everyone felt pretty good about themselves.
Rightfully so, perhaps.
Perhaps. But it led to complacency. They then attempted a really complex tandem crane lift. 2 cranes lifting one load.
Tricky operation.
Very tricky. And poor communication between the operators, a human element that wasn't really covered adequately by their generic check-the-box training, caused a misaligned load. It toppled. 3 workers injured.
Despite the award and the great safety record on paper.
Despite all the paperwork and the awards, yeah.
Yeah.
They lacked the necessary vigilance, the adaptability for the unforeseen complexity of that specific job. Okay, so if we pull this all together, the synthesis seems to be that the top-down model is excellent for creating structure, setting intent, getting investment,
Definitely.
but its rigidity can backfire severely, especially in the dynamic, unpredictable environment of a construction site where things change constantly.
Exactly. The failures we just walked through, they really highlight this massive, sometimes life-threatening gap between management's safety vision, often created in that clean office.
And the messy, unpredictable reality on the ground.
Precisely. So what that means is the path forward isn't just about writing better rules.
It needs something else.
It needs incorporating immediate bottom-up feedback loops. And we're moving beyond just getting feedback from field personnel, which is still important, don't get me wrong.
Like-
But we also need critical, almost instantaneous feedback coming directly from the equipment itself.
Okay. So that's the technological pivot we talked about.
That's it. We're talking about technology providing real-time analysis of how the crane is actually operating and delivering something that, frankly, doesn't really exist widely in the field today. Predictive, actionable data.
Predictive. So not just reacting to problems, but seeing them coming.
Exactly. Think beyond just simple anti-collision warnings. This kind of data can analyze operational patterns, component stress, environmental factors
To predict what?
to predict a pending issue. Maybe a hydraulic problem that's developing, a component that's deteriorating faster than expected, a structural stress point reaching a critical threshold before it causes an incident.
And the goal is to get that information out quickly.
Instantly to both management and the operator on the ground, closing that safety feedback loop in real time. That's how you drive accident statistics down to a new low.
And your sources mentioned this isn't just theory, right? There are companies working on this.
That's right. Firms like Risk Data Analytics, Inc., for example, they're actively providing these kinds of technology solutions now, trying to streamline this balance, establish that essential dynamic safety feedback loop.
Okay. So what does this all mean then for the industry, for people listening? We've covered a pretty massive shift today, haven't we?
We have.
Moving from this strict, mandatory compliance checklist mindset
towards one that requires these dynamic information loops, something that blends the necessary structure we talked about with real-time field adaptability, and now machine intelligence.
Hmm.
It really does. And it raises a really important, maybe even provocative question for you to consider as this technology becomes more common, more integrated.
Okay, what's the question?
If technology can provide that cold, hard data telling an operator that, say, a component is statistically likely to fail soon, or that the current wind conditions are technically right on the borderline according to the algorithm, where does the industry draw the line?
The line between what?
Between following those data-driven mandates, those alerts from the machine,
Hmm.
and allowing the on-the-ground gut instinct judgment of a seasoned, experienced operator who might see the situation differently.
Ah, that tension between the machine's prediction and the human's expertise.
Exactly. How that tension gets resolved, how we balance data with experience, that's probably what will ultimately define the success of this next generation of construction safety.
That is a great question to take away, and one we'll definitely be keeping an eye on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.